The four most dangerous words in investing are, this time, it's different. Sir John Templeton. Every financial bubble in history had a story. Every debt crisis had an excuse. And every government that borrowed too much believed they could deal with it later. Well, later might be arriving. Because America's debt problem just got a whole lot worse. Not next decade. Not someday. Right now. And the scary part? Most people have no idea what's actually happening. Imagine putting your mortgage, your car payment, your groceries, and your vacation on a credit card. Then instead of paying it off, you borrow even more money to make the minimum payment. That sounds insane. Yet that's increasingly how the world's largest economy is operating. And history tells us this movie doesn't end the way people think. To understand today's debt problem, we need to go back. Way back. Timeline from 1945-1980-2008-2020. Today, after World War II, America's debt exploded. Debt to GDP reached roughly 119%. Sounds terrifying. Except there was one huge difference. The economy was booming. The population was growing. Productivity was rising. And inflation quietly helped reduce the debt burden. America essentially grew its way out. Problem solved. Or so it seemed. Fast forward to 2008. The financial crisis hits. Banks fail. Markets panic. The government responds with trillions of dollars. Debt rises. Then comes 2020. And everything goes completely off the rails. Money printer go BRRRRR. Stimulus checks. Emergency spending. Business bailouts. Liquidity everywhere. The national debt jumps from around $23 trillion to over $36 trillion in just a few years. And unlike after World War II, economic growth isn't exploding. That's where the sequel becomes dangerous. Meet the villain, not the debt, the interest. Most people focus on the $36 trillion, but that's not the scary number. The scary number is what happens when interest rates rise. For years, America borrowed money almost for free. Rates near zero. Life was good. Then inflation arrived. The Federal Reserve slammed on the brakes. Rates jumped above 5%. And suddenly, refinancing debt became much more expensive. Snowball gets bigger and bigger. According to recent Treasury data, annual interest costs have surged past $1 trillion. That's trillion. With a T. America now spends more servicing debt than many countries spend running their entire governments. And here's the crazy part. Hundreds of billions of dollars of existing debt still need to be refinanced. At today's higher rates, meaning interest expenses could keep climbing, even if government spending stopped growing tomorrow. Think about that. The debt is no longer the snowball. The interest is? So what does this mean for you? Should you sell everything? Buy gold? Move into a bunker? Probably not. Here's where things get weird. Markets can keep rising, even while debt gets worse. In fact, we've seen that movie before. Japan has carried enormous debt for decades. Yet markets continued functioning. Life went on. Investors adapted. But there are consequences. Higher debt often means more borrowing, more money creation, more inflation risk, and potentially slower long-term growth. Wheel labeled inflation, taxes, growth, money printing. This is why investors are paying attention to gold, to Bitcoin, to hard assets, to companies with strong cash flows. They're preparing for multiple outcomes, not betting on one. And that's the key lesson. The smartest investors don't predict. They prepare. Nobody knows exactly how this ends. The doomers think collapse is guaranteed. The optimists think everything will magically work out. History suggests reality usually lands somewhere in the middle. America's debt problem just got worse. That's a fact. But debt alone has never been enough to predict the future. What matters is how governments respond, how markets adapt, and how investors position themselves. The goal isn't to predict tomorrow. The goal is to survive tomorrow. Because in investing, The people who stay in the game are usually the ones who win. Final closing visual.